13 plus mind-blowing lessons from the book, How to Read a Person Like a Book. Number 1. Why is it that we are born into the world with clenched fists and leave it with outstretched fingers? Talmud. Number 2. Confidence can bring about self-control, and the reverse is also true. Self-control can easily degenerate into nervousness and frustration. A confident person is likely to talk without hand-to-face gestures like covering the mouth and nose and head scratching. So in reading gestures for confidence, one should watch for a doubt or other negative gesture that would contradict the feeling that is being projected. A proud, erect stance, often seen in the man who has accomplished much and knows where he is going, is also a clear indication of confidence. Perhaps that is why we often advise youngsters to stand up straight. Not only is it physically beneficial, but it nonverbally communicates self-assurance. A colleague of ours goes one step further. He claims that he can change his feelings from depression to determination merely by squaring his shoulders and straightening his back. Confident persons have more frequent eye contact than those who are unsure or attempting to conceal, and the duration of contact is longer. Confidence also causes the eyes to blink less. Hence, the person seems to be a better listener. Number 3. A very common gesture of reassurance when a woman says or hears something that makes her uncomfortable is to slowly and gracefully bring her hand to her throat. When she is wearing a necklace, the movement is disguised as wanting to feel that the necklace is still there. If you ask her, "Are you sure about what you just said?" she will probably attempt to assure you that she is, or she will become defensive and refuse to answer. In either case, she is signaling that she does not completely believe what she has said. Another common gesture that communicates reassurance is pinching the fleshy part of the hand. It is used by both men and women, though it is far more common with women. In one test, we furnished first viewers with coffee to try to keep their hands occupied while they watched the playback. We wanted to see how many would set the coffee down and then go through a self-pinching gesture. We found that many of them first used the cup as a shield in front of their eyes, as though trying to block out the offending sight, then set it down and went through the self-pinching ritual. Number 4. Mothers are said to be much more responsive and aware of their children's needs than our fathers. As Victor Hugo observed, men have sight, women insight. After all, the mother has had to respond more so than the father to nonverbal communications from her offspring during its first 2 years, before any verbal communication was possible. As a result of this experience, she senses much more accurately how her children feel. Sound and decibel level are often modes of nonverbal communication in the parent-child relationship. Messages are conveyed by such things as slamming doors, playing music loud, and screaming. In addition, it is usually agreed that a mother can tell whether a child's crying indicates that it wants food, needs a change, is sick, or perhaps just tired. However, various experiments have shown that a mother cannot recognize messages solely on the basis of her child's cry. These tests consisted of tape recordings of the various cries of the child presented to the mother for identification while she was isolated from her child. Under these circumstances, the mother could not distinguish one cry from another. This, however, is not difficult to understand. We should not expect a mother to do better than any other person trying to receive a message when that message is limited to a single word, sound, or gesture. The mother's ability depends upon the gesture cluster, the congruity of the message, and the circumstances involving the cry. All of these communication devices are used by her to understand and satisfy the child's needs. Number 5. A determining factor in the amount of nonverbal communication between strangers is whether one or the other is considering any involvement. As an example, 2 strangers boarding a subway at the same time late in the evening may be very apprehensive about each other and decide not to make any eye contact. As we have said, eye contact means recognition, which sometimes precedes conversation and involvement. By not exchanging glances, these 2 travelers are communicating a lack of interest in each other, even though they share an uneasy feeling about the situation. If, on the other hand, one wants to gain reassurance, he might display a gesture cluster of first looking at the other person, clearing his throat or blinking, then saying something non-controversial like, "Subways are not very crowded this late at night," or "Seems strange not to get pushed around by a mob." Depending on the level of uncertainty each feels concerning the other, their ages, their sex, and their respective attitudes about engaging in a conversation, this situation could produce anything from a suspicious look to an interesting and provocative conversation that might even lead to a more permanent relationship. Number 6. Facial expressions can express shock or great surprise. In these emotional states, a person's mouth is wide open because the jaw muscles are relaxed due to shock, and the chin drops. There is, however, a time when the mouth unconsciously opens, and it is not due to shock or surprise. This happens when a person concentrates on one thing so intently, for example, when attempting to fit together delicate parts of a mechanism, that every muscle in his face below the eyes is completely relaxed. Sometimes the tongue even protrudes from the mouth. Number 7. Many a male can recall a close relative saying to him, "I'm going to teach you how to shake hands like a man." There followed instructions on how to grip the other person's hand, how to squeeze it firmly, and how to release it. But no one teaches a businesswoman how to shake hands like a woman. She develops a firm handshake out of self-defense, having constantly encountered businessmen who automatically extend their hand in greeting like a man. Women, when expressing sincere feelings to other women, particularly during a crisis, do not shake hands. They gently hold the other's hands in theirs, and with congruous facial expressions, communicate their deep sympathy. Often, an embrace that endorses their attitude will follow. Very seldom will a woman use this gesture with a man. It seems to be specially reserved for communication with her own sex. Number 8. Conducting seminars has afforded an enormous amount of data on persons who are fidgeters. We find that most individuals fidget for one or more of these reasons. Number 1. They are tired. Number 2. What is being said is not stimulating them to listen intently. Number 3. They have programmed their bodies to start responding to a specific time, say lunchtime, and their bodies are telling them it is time for a break. Number 4. The chairs are not well padded and their posteriors are complaining. Number 5. They are preoccupied with other things. A seminar leader who recognizes these gestures and acts accordingly is said to be able to relate to the group. A teacher is lost if he is not aware of how well his pupils are receiving his lecture material. If unresponded to, the fidgety types sometimes go into the next phase, tuning out. Number 9. Some people equate readiness with aggressiveness. We will, however, use readiness in relation to a goal-oriented high achiever who usually has no time for hostility. Since he is busy gathering information and getting things done, he is a person who has a high enthusiasm for what he is attempting to achieve and may also have some of the qualities that Dr. Abraham Maslow has described as self-actualizing. Number 10. Patience and perseverance, we are taught at an early age, are necessary to achieve our goals and objectives. Expressions such as "get hold of yourself" are common. We use them as tools to overcome frustration and keep from losing our temper. They permit us to play a role and behave in a socially acceptable manner. People who are angry, frustrated, or otherwise apprehensive have nonetheless learned to disguise their emotions through the use of various gesture clusters. Holding an arm behind the back and clenching the hand tightly while the other hand grips the wrist or arm is one of the more common, as is the locked ankles gesture. One can observe them on many a business or social occasion when a person is subjected to tension, pressure, or anxiety. Number 11. The next time you hear someone use the hackneyed expression, "he's uptight," ask him to explain why he thinks so. At first, he may use the "you-know" approach in an attempt to explain what he means. As a result of not being able to verbalize what he strongly feels, you may have an uptight person talking about another uptight person. We believe that he perceived an entire gesture cluster that he labeled uptight. A man walked into a room very rapidly and did not immediately sit down. After being asked, he finally did, but chose a chair as far away as possible. Then he crossed his arms and legs and looked out the window. When asked if everything was all right, he quickly shifted his weight and position in the chair and pointed his body toward the door. From these indications, a worried, nervous, anxious condition, uptightness, was nonverbally communicated. The receiver of this message, wondering what had caused this condition, asked, "Is everything all right?" After an unsatisfactory response, he said, "Are you sure everything is all right?" The second query caused the person to get up and pace the room rapidly before telling the observer, "Get off my back." Number 12. Pinching the bridge of the nose. This gesture, usually accompanied with closed eyes, communicates great thought and concern about the decision to be made. A person in self-conflict might lower his head and pinch the bridge of his nose to test whether he really is in such a predicament or it is only a bad dream. A businessman we know clearly signals his quandary by this gesture. When he performs it, we merely keep quiet and wait for him to raise his objections to what is being discussed. We do not attempt to reason him out of this situation. Instead, we recognize his feelings and wait for him to express his doubts. Number 13. Sitting with a leg over arm of chair. Getting a leg up. At first, we assumed that it was a comfortable position from which a person communicated by his openness a certain amount of cooperative spirit. However, we soon discovered that despite the seemingly relaxed position, the person, even if he sometimes has a slight smile on his face, is not cooperative. Instead, he is generally unconcerned about or hostile to the other person's feelings or needs. We also uncovered a similar body position in Henry Siddons's book, Rhetorical Gestures, in which Siddons describes as indifferent an English country gentleman of 1832 sitting in this very position. Airline stewardesses have reported that male travelers who take this position are often difficult to relate to. In many buyer-seller relationships, the buyer in his office will take this position to announce nonverbally his dominance or territorial rights in the encounter on his home ground, and many a boss will assume it to show superiority in his employee's office. Number 14. The eyes of men converse as much as their tongues, with the advantage that the ocular dialect needs no dictionary, but is understood the world over. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Easily the least controversial of all the areas of nonverbal communication is facial expression, as this is the most readily observed group of gestures. We focus our eyes on the face more often than on any other part of the body, and the expressions we see there have widely accepted meanings. At some time or another, almost everyone has encountered a look that could kill, a fisheye, a come-hither look, or an I'm available glance. During a business negotiation, one can observe a wide range of facial expressions. At one extreme is the aggressively hostile negotiator who sees a negotiation as an arena where a do-or-die situation exists. He typically looks at you with eyes wide open, lips tightly closed and corners of his eyebrows down, and sometimes he even talks through his teeth with very little movement of lips. At the other end of the spectrum is the individual who approaches the negotiation table with impeccable manners and a choir boy look of half-closed or somewhat droopy eyelids, a veiled, slight smile, and peacefully arched eyebrows without any furrow on the forehead. However, he is probably a very capable and competitive individual who believes in cooperation as a dynamic process.